Galactic Conundrums, Earth, the ultimate death world. They thought Earth was harmless. They were wrong. A world where the air crushes, the water poisons, and the smallest creatures wield venoms beyond imagination. Even the greatest warriors of the galaxy are nothing more than prey here. One warrior dared to challenge Earth's dominion. He didn't last a day. This is the story of how one planet defies all logic, all power, and all arrogance. And by the end, you'll be asking yourself, if Earth is this dangerous, what else is waiting to be discovered? A vast, circular hall stretches beyond what the eye can comprehend, filled with students from across the galaxy. Bioluminescent script flickers across the vaulted ceilings, shifting between languages incomprehensible to most. The air hums with an otherworldly frequency, an undercurrent of unspoken knowledge vibrating through the walls of the Galactic University. At the center, Professor Xanthar, an imposing figure draped in layered academic robes that shimmer like liquid stardust, stands before a levitating projection of a planet bathed in swirling blues and greens. His three luminous eyes reflect the planet's image as he addresses the eager if skeptical class. Professor Xanthar. There are few places in the known universe that hold the distinction of being classified as a Class 13 death world. Today, we turn our focus to one such anomaly, an unassuming orb located in the Sol system. A world so deceptively ordinary that many have made the fatal mistake of underestimating it. Earth. A murmur ripples through the lecture hall. Some students shift uncomfortably, others lean in with curiosity. Among them, Draken, a towering warrior-class alien, shifts in his reinforced seat, exoskeletal plates gleaming under the artificial lights. He exhales sharply, an unmistakable sound of disdain. Draken. Earth? The primitive rock. He scoffs, folding two of his forearms across his plated chest. I fail to see how a species barely capable of interstellar travel could be considered a threat. Their own world is contained, their reach insignificant. A backwater planet at best. Professor Xanthar's mouth curls, not quite a smile, more like the tightening of a predator's gaze upon unsuspecting prey. Professor Xanthar. Ah, the arrogance of ignorance. A sentiment many before you have shared, before they met their fate upon that very primitive rock. With a wave of his clawed hand, the planetary projection shifts, zooming in on Earth's sprawling continents. Vast deserts bake under the unforgiving sun, dense jungles seethe with life unseen, ice-covered tundras stretch into the void like frozen graveyards. The image pulses as though the planet itself is breathing. Professor Xanthar. You see, Earth is not merely a planet, it is a crucible. Its inhabitants have been forged in the fires of perpetual struggle. Unlike your sterile, engineered home worlds, this world is untamed. Its gravity crushes, its atmosphere corrodes, and its life forms wage an endless biochemical war against one another. There is no peace on Earth. There is only survival. A student with translucent, amphibian-like skin raises a tentacle in protest. Student. But Professor, Surely even a death world must have limits? Earth's species cannot be more advanced than our own. They still rely on projectile weapons and crude atomic devices. Xanthar's gaze flickers toward the student, and with the slightest nod, the projection changes again. A still image appears, a grainy, ancient photograph of an unremarkable human standing beside a towering metallic construct. Professor Xanthar. Ah, the folly of measuring power solely by technological advancement. Do you know what separates Earth's apex species from the rest of the galaxy? It is not their tools. It is their minds. He turns, pacing slowly, each step punctuated by an eerie resonance in the floor beneath him. Professor Xanthar. On Earth, evolution is not a passive force, it is a relentless, merciless sculptor. The creatures of this world have adapted to an environment so hostile, so brutally efficient, that even the smallest among them can unmake the greatest of warriors. And should you doubt me? He extends a clawed finger, and the projection shifts once more. The image magnifies closer, closer until the class is staring at the detailed visage of a small, eight-legged creature, its dark carapace glistening, fangs bristling with venom. Professor Xanthar. Students, allow me to introduce you to one of Earth's most efficient killers, the funnel web spider. A ripple of unease spreads through the students. Several instinctively activate their personal shield generators, a subconscious response to a danger they can feel but do not yet understand. Even Draken stiffens slightly. Draken, this is what you call dangerous? A creature that I could crush with a single digit. Professor Xanthar's third eye gleams ominously. Professor Xanthar. Ah, Draken, you have just volunteered to test that theory. As silence falls over the hall, thick as interstellar fog, the other students shift uncomfortably in their seats, sensing an escalation they cannot quite predict. Draken, however, leans forward, his mandibles twitching in amusement. Draken, you're serious? A field test? What, do you expect me to be frightened of a place where creatures are smaller than my eye socket? Professor Xanthar inclines his head slightly, his posture unnervingly calm. The great galactic scholar rarely raises his voice, he does not need to. Professor Xanthar, tell me, Draken, have you ever heard of Australia? Draken blinks. He looks to the side, as if expecting someone else to answer for him. The name means nothing. He has studied Earth's political geography in passing, but such trivial divisions are beneath him. Draken, no. Should I have? Across the room, Jason Reed, the lone human exchange student, audibly chokes on his beverage. His cup of black liquid labeled coffee slips in his grip, nearly toppling over. He clears his throat, wiping his mouth with the sleeve of his Academy-issued jumpsuit. Jason, I'm sorry, did you just say Australia? Oh no. Nope. Bad idea. Terrible idea. The aliens turn toward him, puzzled. Jason looks around, incredulous at their blank expressions. Jason, you don't get it. You really don't get it. Australia is where nightmares go on vacation. If the rest of Earth is dangerous, then Australia is. It's just worse. Professor Xanthar remains eerily composed. Professor Xanthar, then it will make the perfect proving ground. Draken chuckles, crossing all four arms. He leans back in his chair, exuding confidence. Draken, fine. Let's go to this Australia of yours. I could use some amusement. Xanthar's three eyes gleam with something ancient, something knowing. Professor Xanthar, very well, Draken. Class, prepare for departure. You have 3 solar cycles to finalize your medical documentation. You may need it. Jason groans, running a hand through his hair. Jason, great. I always wanted to witness an overconfident alien meet his doom. Guess today's the day. The students murmur amongst themselves. Somewhere in the darkness, the projection of Earth lingers, pulsing like a quiet heartbeat. A brilliant flash of energy rips through the dry air as the teleportation field collapses, leaving the alien students stranded under an unforgiving golden sun. The very air itself feels thick, dense, heavy, with an oppressive weight none of them anticipated. A crushing silence follows the teleportation, broken only by the distant, piercing cry of some unseen creature. The ground beneath them is parched, cracked like ancient skin, the reddish dust swirling around their feet as if the land itself is alive. Strange, twisted trees stand as skeletal sentinels in the distance, their bark charred and weathered, their branches twisted like grasping claws. Shadows ripple across the earth, moving unervingly, as if something beyond the visible spectrum is watching. Draken takes a confident step forward, only to freeze as his exoskeleton seems to groan under the sudden increase in gravitational force. Draken. This gravity, it is absurdly dense. One of the smaller, gelatinous students collapses instantly, its translucent form flattening against the ground like a melted candle. Another, a crystalline entity, emits a sharp, vibrating sound, whether a warning or distress signal is unclear. Jason, the lone human among them, breathes in deeply, his expression one of grim amusement. Jason, yeah, welcome to Australia. That's step 1. This place doesn't want you here. Step 2 is figuring out all the ways it can make that fact permanent. A sudden, rhythmic thudding breaks the uneasy tension. The ground trembles slightly. A deep, almost percussive vibration rolls through the dust. The students tense. Even Professor Xanthar's 3 eyes narrow. Some activate their personal defense shields. Others take instinctive steps backward. And then, from over the jagged hill crest, it appears. A hulking, muscular form, bounding forward with unnatural speed, its movements alien in their efficiency. A kangaroo, its reddish-brown fur blending seamlessly with the surrounding terrain, launches forward, its massive tail sweeping behind it like a living whip. Its black, beady eyes lock onto the group for a fraction of a second before it pivots and continues its path into the wilderness. One of the floating gas-like entities lets out a digital screech. Several students ignite their shields. Draken, however, merely watches, unimpressed. Draken, that was the great terror of this place. A creature with no natural weapons? Laughable. Jason lets out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. Jason, oh, mate. You have no idea. A sharp, inhuman shriek pierces the air. The students whip around, some activating their personal shields, others instinctively backing away. The cry came from a Zion student, an entity of shifting crystalline tendrils who is now frozen, its many-lensed eyes locked onto something on the ground. A huntsman spider, its broad, hairy legs sprawled wide, clings to the bark of a nearby tree. Its body is motionless, its beady eyes empty and unblinking. Yet there is something unnerving about it, something wrong. One of the gaseous students flickers erratically. A biomechanical being hums as its internal processors run survival calculations. Student whispers, "It has too many legs." Jason, the human, steps forward, taking a casual sip of his coffee. Jason, relax. That's just a huntsman. They are fine. The class stares at him in disbelief. Someone lets out a garbled click of confusion. Student, fine. Jason, yeah. They are harmless. Won't bite you unless you really annoy them. More likely to just give you a heart attack by dropping onto your face while you're driving. A collective horror spreads through the students. Draken steps forward, exhaling loudly. His armored foot sinks slightly into the dust as he folds his arms, unimpressed. Draken, this is the legendary terror of Earth? A creature the size of my auxiliary mandible. Professor Xanthar watches, saying nothing. Draken steps closer to the spider, reaching out with a clawed finger. Jason, might not wanna. Too late. The spider moves. It scuttles with unnatural speed, its movements erratic and sudden, defying all expected biological patterns. 1 second, it is on the tree, the next, it has vanished completely. The Zion student lets out a shriek. Student, where did it go? Draken stiffens, his battle armor locking. The surrounding silence is thick with unease. Then, from above, something drops. Draken sneers, his mandibles clicking in irritation as the huntsman spider scuttles into the shadows of the cracked earth. His armored foot rises, casting a jagged shadow over the soil, before he stomps down with crushing force. A sharp, final crack echoes through the dry air. Silence. The students remain motionless, gazes locked on the spot where the arachnid had been. A deep, uneasy stillness spreads, as though the very land itself is holding its breath. Then, the ground begins to move. Tiny, skittering forms emerge from beneath the crushed earth. Dozens, no, hundreds of minute, writhing bodies spill out like a living tide, their thin legs moving in an unnatural, synchronized chaos. They seethe across the ground, spilling outward in all directions, an explosion of life born from death. A Zion student lets out a sharp, metallic wail. Several other students leap backward, shields flickering to full power. One of the gaseous beings implodes slightly, its body condensing in sheer panic. Student, horrified whisper, they were waiting. Jason takes a slow, measured sip of his coffee, unbothered. He gestures vaguely toward the surging arachnid swarm with his free hand. Jason, yeah, that's the thing about Earth, mate. Everything's got backup plans for its backup plans. Draken remains frozen, his mandibles slightly parted in stunned silence. His towering frame, so confident before, suddenly seems very, very small against the unrelenting ocean of legs. For the first time since arriving, he does not move forward. Professor Xanthar watches with quiet amusement, his third eye gleaming with something that might be satisfaction. The spiders continue their relentless march, disappearing into unseen crevices, their presence leaving behind nothing but the imprint of unease. The air in the Australian outback is thick with a tension that defies logic. A stillness, a quiet that seems unnatural in such a vast, living place. The land here is parched, the soil cracked and broken, forming gaping fissures, wounds upon the surface of the world. And within one of these jagged crevices, something stirs. Draken steps forward, his towering frame casting a shadow over the whole. His exoskeletal armor gleams in the blistering sunlight, his stance one of absolute confidence. Draken, a nest, you say? A creature so small that it must hide within the dirt? Pathetic. I have faced plasma storms. I have waded through acid swamps. No earth-dwelling insect will ever pierce the armor of a warrior of the Zorvak Empire. Jason exhales sharply through his nose, adjusting his grip on his coffee cup. His tone is casual, but there's a sharp edge of warning in his words. Jason, Draken, mate, I really wouldn't stand that close. Draken's mandibles click in amusement. Draken, you expect me to fear something I cannot even see? He leans in closer. A mistake. The ground shifts. Something moves within the depths of the crevice, a flicker, a ripple in the shadows, and then, without warning, a dark form launches itself from the nest with terrifying speed. It is small, insignificant in size, but it moves like a bullet, an unholy blur of fangs and limbs, a living missile of predatory precision. Draken has no time to react. The funnel web spider lands directly onto his armor, a mass of writhing legs and venom-dripping fangs. For the first time in his life, the warrior of the Zorvak Empire screams. The noise is inhuman, reverberating through the outback, causing nearby creatures to scatter into the dust. His massive form stumbles backward, his enhanced battle armor sparking violently as warning alerts begin flashing across its interface. Jason takes a slow sip of coffee, watching the chaos unfold. Jason, yeah. Thought so. Time slows. A heartbeat if Draken had one would thunder in his ears. But no, it is the vibrations of his armor that alert him first. The tremor of something impossibly small yet terrifyingly precise. The funnel web spider moves unnaturally fast. Its black, Chidinu's form glistens under the scorching sun as it lunges, its tiny fangs aimed at the most imperceptible vulnerability in Draken's battle armor. The warrior reacts too late. His enhanced reflexes, so finely tuned for large-scale combat, fail him. The spider slips through a seam no wider than a grain of sand, a microscopic gap in his reinforced plating. A high-pitched warning alarm blares from his armor's biodefense system. Too late. Pain. Real, raw, excruciating pain. Not from the bite itself, Draken barely registers the puncture, but from what follows. A searing, corrosive force floods his secondary circulatory system. His exoskeleton begins to bubble, the molecular integrity dissolving like fragile crystalline acid. The venom spreads impossibly fast, hijacking his nervous system, rendering his enhanced musculature useless. Draken screams. A sound that is not a warrior's cry, but something primal. Something terrified. The class watches in horrified fascination. Some students scramble backward, their own bodies instinctively recognizing the predator before them. Others, frozen in a mix of disbelief and scientific awe, remain transfixed. Professor Xanthar's third eye glows with uncontained excitement. His elongated fingers dance across his data pad, documenting every reaction, every stage of the venom's assault. His expression is not one of concern but of curiosity. Professor Xanthar fascinating. The venom is adapting to his unique biochemistry. Observe, students, the way it reacts to his secondary carapace layer. It appears to be liquefying his armored plating at an accelerated rate. Remarkable. Draken collapses to his knees, his pride dissolving as quickly as his armor. His arms tremble, the once indestructible Zorvak battle shell failing him in the face of this microscopic nightmare. Jason takes another sip of coffee, watching the scene unfold like an inevitable car crash. Jason, yup. That's about right. Draken's head tilts back, his segmented eyes wide in disbelief as he falls backward into the dust. The spider, having completed its task, scuttles away, returning to its nest, its domain defended once more. The warrior does not move. His armor is ruined, his pride shattered. The entire class now understands why Earth is a Class 13 death world. The burnt metallic scent of melting armor thickens in the dry air. The once pristine battle shell of the mighty Zorvak warrior now fizzes and smokes, tiny rivulets of molten plating dripping onto the sun-baked earth, hissing as they meet the dust. Draken's limbs twitch involuntarily, his neural pathways overloaded by the rapid, unforgiving invasion of an earth-born toxin. His exoskeletal plating, once a symbol of unbreakable strength, now crumbles away in irregular patches, revealing raw, pulsating layers of vulnerable tissue beneath. The funnel web spider is gone, it has retreated into the earth, satisfied with its effortless victory. But the damage remains. A metallic screech pierces the air. One of the crystalline students lets out a horrified sound, its light-based nervous system flickering erratically in sheer panic. Others scramble away, their survival instincts overriding their scientific curiosity. The floating gas-like entities condense into protective spheres, shielding themselves from an unseen threat. Jason, unfazed, takes a final, slow sip of coffee and sighs. Then, without looking away from Draken's convulsing form, he pulls out his communicator. Jason, dryly, into communicator. Yeah, this is Jason. We've got a code Venom. Again. A brief, crackling silence. Then, a disembodied voice responds. Emergency Response Unit. Through static, specify species and toxin type. Jason glances at the dissolving warrior, then at the smoldering remains of his armor. He gestures vaguely. Jason, big guy. 4 arms. Alien. Some kinda, acid-resistant plating. Oh, and the toxin? Yeah, it's a funnel web spider bite. The communicator hisses as the transmission line suddenly surges with urgent energy. Emergency Response Unit, distorted, suddenly very alert, repeat. Did you say funnel web spider bite? Jason, yup. One of your standard 8-legged terrors. Didn't even pick the biggest one, if that helps. A sharp exhale from the other side of the line. A faint curse in a human dialect. Emergency Response Unit dispatching medical personnel immediately. Stand by. Jason nods to no one in particular, then tucks the communicator away and crouches beside Draken's convulsing body. The warrior's head lolls to the side, his once burning red eyes now flickering weakly, his pride as shattered as his armor. The rest of the class stands frozen, their terror palpable. No one speaks. Jason finally looks up, taking in the wide-eyed expressions of the alien students. Creatures from worlds spanning the galaxy, beings with enhanced reflexes, impenetrable hides, and biological adaptations meant to withstand the most extreme conditions imaginable. And yet, here they stand, visibly shaken by something the size of their own digits. He gestures toward Draken's smoking form. Jason, so. You guys get it now. Silence. Then, a single voice, small, trembling. Student, barely above a whisper, this planet is cursed. Professor Xanthar, still recording data, finally looks up from his data pad. His 3 glowing eyes glimmer with intrigue, not an ounce of concern in them. Professor Xanthar, pleased, almost giddy, fascinating. The air shudders as a teleportation beacon ignites, signaling the arrival of the emergency medical response team. The class watches, their once skeptical minds now burdened with a terrible realization. They had never truly understood what it meant for Earth to be a Class 13 death world. The sterile, dimly lit corridors of the Sydney Interspecies Medical Facility hum with quiet activity. The air is thick with a scent of antiseptics, sharp, clinical, tinged with a faint metallic tang of sterilized equipment. Beyond reinforced glass walls, various alien patients are being monitored, their vitals flickering across holographic displays. Some are floating, some are molten, some are barely corporeal at all. And then, there's Draken. The towering Zorvak warrior, once a monolith of strength, now lies crumpled in an oversized hospital bed, his forearms motionless, his once impenetrable armor reduced to charred, dissolving fragments. A pulsing stasis field surrounds his bed, isolating him from any further exposure to Earth's merciless elements. His secondary heart is still stabilizing. His neural receptors are flickering unpredictably. His pride is in critical condition. A door hisses open. Enter Dr. Reynolds, human, mid-40s, graying at the temples, eyes lined with the weight of too many midnight shifts treating injuries that should not be possible. She pauses at the foot of Draken's bed, her gaze sweeping across the med-scan readouts, lips pursed in something between mild fascination and complete exasperation. She exhales sharply, rubbing a hand over her face before speaking. Dr. Reynolds, all right. Humor me. How does a 3-meter-tall, armored extraterrestrial get taken down by a spider the size of my thumb? Jason, leaning casually against the far wall, arms crossed, doesn't even look up from his coffee. Jason, dryly, sipping his drink, oh, you know how it is, Doc. They never think it can happen to them. Dr. Reynolds narrows her eyes, pinching the bridge of her nose. The familiar routine of intergalactic arrogance leading to near-death experiences has played out in this very hospital too many times to count. But a funnel web bite? On a Zorvak? That's a first. She taps a few commands into the hollow console beside the bed. Draken's bio readings pulse erratically, stabilizing but still riddled with anomalies. Dr. Reynolds, half muttering, scrolling through data, neurotoxin bonded to his subdermal plating, breached his secondary circulatory system, and then chemically rewrote his pain receptors in under 12 minutes. Incredible. Also, ridiculous. A low groan rattles from the bed. Draken stirs. His eyes flicker open, hazy, unfocused, filled with something alien to his kind. Fear. Draken, weakly, barely a whisper, what happened? Jason sets down his coffee with a soft clink, stepping forward with an expression of almost sympathetic amusement. Jason, mate, you lost a fight to something with no bones and 8 legs. How do you think it went? Draken's mandibles twitch, his forearms shifting slightly, as if attempting to move, but his body refuses. The venom, though neutralized, has left lingering echoes in his biochemical pathways. Dr. Reynolds leans over, arms crossed. Dr. Reynolds, you're lucky we had the anti-venom on standby. Most off-worlders don't. If Jason hadn't called it in fast enough, your entire nervous system would have turned into a biological wasteland. Draken's throat tightens. He was supposed to be unstoppable. Indomitable. A warrior of legend. And yet, one bite. One moment of underestimation. And now, he is here breathing only because of human intervention. The room falls into a weighted silence. Jason, sensing the shift, claps a hand against Draken's remaining intact armor plating, flashing a grin that is entirely too relaxed given the situation. Jason, cheer up, big guy. At least now you can say you've had the full Earth experience. Draken doesn't answer. He simply stares at the ceiling, expression unreadable. Outside, beyond the reinforced glass, a medical bot scans another incoming patient, an alien of unknown origin, its form convulsing violently from yet another Earth-based misadventure. Dr. Reynolds sighs, already preparing the next case file. The vast hall of Galactic University is filled to capacity. Every seat occupied. Every student present. A stark contrast from the usual lazily half-attended sessions of Xenobiology 101. Today, there are no skeptics. No dismissive murmurs. No defiant sneers. Only silent, unwavering focus. A holographic projection hums at the front of the hall, displaying a looping magnification of an Earth-born funnel web spider, its needle-thin fangs glistening, its legs twitching with eerie precision. Even the floating gas-like entities keep a respectful distance from the image, their normally fluidic forms contracting slightly, as though attempting to minimize their surface area, lest a mere image of the creature somehow lunge at them. At the podium, Professor Xanthar surveys the class, his three eyes gleaming with something that might be satisfaction, or amusement. His elongated fingers tap against his day top hat, reviewing the results of their latest practical lesson. At the front row, Draken sits rigidly, his once polished battle armor now visibly reinforced with an unnatural number of new protective layers. His arms remain folded, but his mandibles are still, his posture betraying an underlying unease. He has not spoken much since his return from Earth. Professor Xanthar finally clears his throat, his vocal chambers resonating across the vast hall. Professor Xanthar, 1 week ago, many of you know, all of you believed Earth to be a world of insignificance. That its creatures, its very ecosystem, could not possibly pose a threat to civilizations that span the stars. A hush falls. Several students exchange glances. They do not believe that anymore. Professor Xanthar taps a button on his console. The holographic image shifts from the spider to a recording of Draken's attack, captured in high definition. The class watches as the funnel web spider launches, as it pierces through his seemingly indestructible armor, as the mighty warrior collapses, his exoskeleton melting, his body overcome by agony. A few students flinch. One of the crystalline species emits a high-frequency hum, a biological response to distress. Draken's jaw tightens. He does not look away. Professor Xanthar turns, addressing the class with deliberate calm. Professor Xanthar, and so, students, tell me, what have we learned? For a moment, there is only silence. Then, as one, the entire class speaks in perfect unison, a response not of obligation, but of raw, collective understanding. Class, voices strong, resolute, never underestimate Earth life forms. Professor Xanthar's mandibles twitch, his equivalent of a smirk. Professor Xanthar, excellent. Now, let us begin today's lecture on the creatures of Earth's oceans. A visible wave of terror ripples through the students. Draken, for the first time in his life, reaches for his emergency teleportation device. A heavy stillness lingers in the Galactic University lecture hall. The once boastful voices of warrior-class students, the dismissive scoffs of intellectual elites all have vanished. In their place is quiet reverence and fear. Draken sits at his designated place, his newly reinforced armor gleaming under the soft glow of quantum lights. Unlike before, he does not dominate the space around him. His presence, once exuding the arrogance of an unshakable conqueror, is now measured, restrained. He no longer leans back in confidence. Instead, he sits rigid, contemplative, as if the very air around him holds unseen threats. Before him, a data tablet hums to life, displaying a long and unsettling list. His fingers twitch before he speaks, his voice low, subdued, lacking the defiance it once carried. Draken, monotone, almost distant, Earth's medical database contains over 10,000 recorded venom treatments. And that's just for native species. The class shifts uneasily. A soft, collective murmur spreads like a ripple across the room. 10,000 treatments. For venom alone. One of the crystalline students lets out a harmonic vibration, the equivalent of a shudder. A gas-based entity expands, then contracts, the motion akin to a deep, anxious breath. Draken swipes a clawed finger over the console, and the screen shifts, revealing case studies, treatments, scientific analyses spanning centuries, each entry more terrifying than the last. A parasite that dissolves its host from the inside out before taking control of its nervous system. A microscopic marine creature capable of delivering fatal neurotoxins within seconds. A jellyfish so imperceptibly small, yet so agonizingly lethal, that victims have been known to beg for death before help can arrive. Draken, staring at the data, speaking more to himself than the class, these creatures, they don't simply kill. They torment. The realization hangs in the air like a storm cloud. Professor Xanthar leans forward slightly, his long fingers intertwining, his three glowing eyes fixed on Draken with a gaze that is both amused and deeply satisfied. Professor Xanthar, measured, but pleased, Draken. It would seem that, at long last, you have truly seen Earth for what it is. Draken remains silent. There is nothing to say. No rebuttal to form. No counter-argument to make. Earth has spoken for itself. And he has listened. Professor Xanthar slowly rises, his dark robes shifting like flowing nebulae, and he gestures to the class. Professor Xanthar, let this be a lesson not just in biology, but in wisdom. Arrogance blinds even the most powerful. And ignorance, well, as we have learned, ignorance can be fatal. The entire class nods in unison. There is no disagreement. No doubt. Only understanding. Draken exhales a slow, measured release of breath. He looks down at his newly reinforced armor, then at his hands. Once, he believed he was indestructible. Now, he knows better. The lecture hall remains shrouded in silence, the air thick with the weight of realization. The students beings from countless worlds, some immune to radiation, others capable of existing in the vacuum of space, are no longer the same as when they first entered this room. Earth has changed them. Professor Xanthar, his three luminous eyes gleaming with satisfaction, prepares to conclude the lesson. But Jason has other plans. Leaning casually against the console, still nursing his ever-present coffee, Jason tilts his head, a slow grin creeping onto his face. Jason, stretching nonchalantly, "You know, we've talked a lot about Earth's land creatures, but we haven't even touched the real nightmare fuel yet." The class collectively tenses. The crystalline student vibrates at a higher frequency. The floating gas entity contracts as though trying to disappear. Draken, still seated but visibly rigid, narrows his eyes. Draken, hoarsely, hesitant, "Nightmare, fuel." Jason nods, taking another long, deliberate sip of coffee before tapping a command on the console. The holographic display shifts, replacing the funnel web spider with something deceptively beautiful. A coned snail. A small, elegant shell spiraled in intricate patterns, glistening in soft pastels, as though nature had crafted something gentle, harmless, inviting. But the class knows better now. There is no such thing as harmless on Earth. A single line of text hovers beneath the projection. Conus geographus, aka the cigarette snail. Kills in minutes. No known anti-venom. The room erupts in barely restrained panic. One of the gas-based students collapses into a compact, quivering sphere, emitting high-pitched pulses of distress. A reptilian student locks up completely, their nictitating membranes fluttering uncontrollably. The crystalline student lets out an unholy screech. Student, choking, barely forming words, "It looks so small." Jason, grinning, nodding, "Yeah. That's the thing. It just sits there on the ocean floor, looking all innocent." And then he snaps his fingers. The hologram shifts, displaying a microscopic harpoon-like proboscis, loaded with a venom so potent, it can paralyze in seconds. The entire class recoils. Jason takes another sip of coffee, his grin widening. Jason, mock innocently, "Oh, and did I mention? The venom doesn't just kill you, it keeps your nervous system firing while shutting down all motor functions." Victims are fully aware as they suffocate. A universal shudder ripples through the class. One of the cyborg students instinctively activates their emergency shutdown sequence, flickering out of consciousness for safety reasons. Draken's battle armor begins beeping wildly, detecting a perceived threat level surpassing the recommended threshold for survivability. A faint hum vibrates from his core plating. Draken, rapidly pressing at his console, voice rising in barely concealed panic, "I refuse. I refuse. I am leaving." Jason blinks. Jason leaving? But mate, we haven't even gotten to the blue-ringed octopus yet. Draken's emergency teleportation system activates with a sharp whine, his entire body enveloped in a flickering blue field. A split second later, He is gone, the faint trace of static all that remains. A long silence follows. The class remains frozen. Then, a sound soft at first, then growing. Professor Xanthar is laughing. It starts as a quiet, measured chuckle, but soon escalates into a deep, resonating peal of amusement, his three eyes glimmering with uncontained satisfaction. Professor Xanthar, grinning, voice rich with approval, at last. At long last. He understands. Jason smirks, tossing a lazy salute toward the now empty seat where Draken once sat. Jason, casually, took him long enough. A beat of silence. Then, one of the remaining students, still visibly shaken, raises a trembling hand. Student, hoarsely, voice weak, Professor, will next week's lesson also be about Earth? Professor Xanthar slowly turns, his teeth glinting in what could only be described as scholarly delight. Professor Xanthar, smiling, ominous, oh, dear student. Earth is a well that never runs dry. The class groans in existential dread. Jason, already pulling up another creature profile, grins. You have seen the truth. You now know that Earth is not just a planet. It is a crucible, where the strong do not survive by sheer force, but by sheer luck. Think about it. If a warrior trained for battle, encased in armor cannot last a day, then what does that say about the rest of us? But this is only the beginning. There are more horrors waiting beneath the surface. What should we uncover next? Leave a comment below, tell me which moment terrified you the most. And if you're brave enough, subscribe. Because once you've seen what's out there, there's no going back.